Now, nowadays, not many people have heard of Samuel Plimsoll. He was a member of Parliament who lived in the 1800s and is best remembered for inventing the mark known as the Plimsoll Line. This was painted on the sides of ships to show how much cargo they could safely carry. This invention and the legislation that accompanied it saved thousands of lives. Plimsoll was a major figure in the Victorian era and even had the shoes known as Plimsolls named after him. By the way, hello to everybody in Plimsoll Avenue, which is in Folkestone. It's on the Creekware estate and named after him. There you go. Useless facts. Plimsoll lived for the last few years of his life in Folkestone, and to find out more about him, our reporter Emily went to the current Plimsoll Exhibition at the Town Hall. There she spoke to the Heritage Officer Rebecca McCutcheon and talked on the phone to the exhibitor's curator Nicolette Jones.
Hi, I'm Emily and I'm here at the Town Hall with Rebecca McCutcheon, who is the Heritage Officer, to go around the Samuel Plimsoll Exhibition. So we're walking around and the first thing we can see is a presentation board showing all of the connections Samuel Plimsoll had with various different people or objects or subjects.
Well, Nicolette did this as a bit of fun, really. She likes to play a game with her children where they can say anything and she will find some random connection with our local hero, Samuel Plimsoll. So you can see on the board here we've got various things from the Beatles, Florence Nightingale to real ale and the gym shoes. I'm sure most of us have had a pair of Plimsolls in our lives, maybe at school, or they're becoming a bit more fashionable now. And the reason they're called Plimsolls is because they have a rubber sole and a canvas top, so there's a certain line that you can walk into the sea or the water to before your feet get wet. And one of the things that Samuel Plimsoll was most famous for was the Plimsoll Line, which prevented ships from being overloaded and causing many sailors to die unnecessarily.
Samuel Plimsoll was the man who campaigned against the overloading of merchant ships. In the mid-19th century, ships could be loaded very deeply because ship owners wanted to make as much profit as they possibly could by loading as much as they could. In 1871, 856 ships went down within 10 miles of the British coast in conditions no worse than a strong breeze. Plimsoll was the whistleblower who said, "This can't go on, sailors are drowning who shouldn't be." So he took the cause into Parliament and he tried to persuade successive governments that they should introduce a load line. Eventually, when it was introduced, it immediately acquired his name and became known as the Plimsoll Mark or the Plimsoll Line, and it marked the line of maximum submergence on the side of a merchant ship, the safe point up to which it could be loaded.
Okay, and the next thing, this board shows monuments and memorials to Samuel Plimsoll, and this is the road sign. Was it that inspired Nicolette? Was that the thing that she found first?
Yeah, that's right, Emily. Nicolette actually lives in London in a road called Plimsoll Avenue, and it was that inspired her to find out more about the Victorian campaigner and national hero. And this is actually the original sign from London where Nicolette lives.
I'm afraid the reason that I wrote the book about Samuel Plimsoll was because I happened to live in Plimsoll Road. There was a pub a few doors down from us that had a sign on it, and one day the pub changed its name and the sign disappeared. I ended up buying the pub sign, and it told me Samuel Plimsoll's name and dates, 1824 to 1898, and it showed the Plimsoll mark. And from that first bit of information, I began to research him and discovered what a huge and extraordinary story Plimsoll's was, that he was a national hero for decades, that this apparently rather simple safety measure had taken 20 years to implement, that he nearly brought down Disraeli's government, and it was a story of the shipwrecks and the machinations in the corridors of power and drowning sailors, I got completely hooked on him and his rhetoric and the extraordinary character that he was. His first wife, who was also very involved in the campaign, whose idea it was in the first place that he should take the cause into Parliament. So I got completely hooked in a rather obsessive 8 years or so of research.
So was Samuel Plimsoll very highly regarded then in Victorian society?
Well, he was certainly highly regarded with the sailors. You know, he was a national hero. He was an MP, so he was a respected figure as well, but he caused quite a ruckus in Parliament. He was very much in favour of fighting for the sailors and protecting them, but Disraeli didn't actually pass his merchant shipping bill originally when Plimsoll put it forward, and that caused the whole of England to go into uproar.
Disraeli, at the end of a session, deferred the merchant shipping bill once too often, and Plimsoll lost his temper spectacularly. He called the MPs in the House of Commons villains, shook his fist at Disraeli. He broke protocol in all kinds of ways, including not sitting down when the Speaker stood up and when another MP stood up. Meanwhile, his wife Eliza was sitting in the ladies' gallery, which was conveniently just above the press gallery, and scattering copies of a protest, because they had anticipated this possible outcome, onto the gentlemen of the press just beneath the ladies' gallery. So the story made the front page of national newspapers. There was a huge national outcry in Plimsoll's favour. There were demonstrations all over the country. And Disraeli, who wrote in private letters that he was afraid for his own political future, had to rush through a stopgap merchant shipping bill in order to save his own skin.
On the next board, we have all about Samuel Plimsoll's life in Folkestone. What kind of connections did he have with the town?
Well, Samuel Plimsoll came to Folkestone in his later life. He was here for 6 years during his retirement. He actually laid the foundation stone for the United Reformed Church, which is by Folkestone Central. But Samuel himself was buried in St Martin's Church in Cheriton, where you can go and see his grave there today. He lived in a couple of places, Augusta Gardens and Clifton Gardens in Folkestone. And you can see in Augusta Gardens, I believe there's a plaque to Samuel Plimsoll there. He continued to campaign whilst he was in Folkestone, and when he died, his hearse was taken over by the sailors and left the horses behind, and the sailors carried him.
He was involved in all kinds of campaigns in his life, strange and unexpected ones, including he campaigned for real ale. He campaigned against the ill treatment of animals on cattle ships. He contributed something very, very significant in our national history, that he travelled to America and persuaded the American authorities to remove anti-British sentiments from American school textbooks. At the time, there was a great deal of Anglophobia in America. Not surprisingly, we'd done things like setting fire to the White House in the early part of the 19th century, and that hostility still raged. But Plimsoll said, this is time to put this away, and persuaded them to remove them, which meant, very importantly, that by the time we got to the First World War, there was a generation of Americans who hadn't grown up with the Anglophobia of the previous generation, and therefore were much more likely to enter the First World War on our side. So in effect, Samuel Plimsoll is the father of the special relationship. We owe him more than we probably realise.
So moving on to the rest of the exhibition, there's a lot of artefacts in glass cases. Were any of these belonging to Plimsoll or having any personal connection with him?
Yes, we've got a couple of letters that you can see here that were written by Samuel Plimsoll. One is to his first wife's female relation, congratulating her on the birth of her baby, and another is to one of Samuel Plimsoll's colleagues, another MP, thanking him for his support with all of his campaigning for the merchant shipping bill and the Plimsoll Line.
Last year we had a fantastic weekend around the 10th of February, which is Plimsoll Day. It's Samuel Plimsoll's birthday, and it was celebrated in British calendars for decades after his death. And we had a memorial service in St Martin's Church in Cheriton, where Plimsoll is buried, followed by a music hall evening in the Folkestone United Reformed Church, where Plimsoll laid one of the foundation stones. Next year, on the 8th of February, there will be a lecture, which I'm afraid will be my lecture, on the continuing relevance of Samuel Plimsoll at St Martin's, and we'll have a short service and a wreath laying. And then in the evening there will again be a wonderful music hall evening with sea shanties and some of the music hall songs that were written in his honour at the time. And then on the 10th of February itself, on Plimsoll Day, the RNLI is organising a Plimsolls On for Plimsoll Day, a fundraising day, like Jeans for Jeans, where you pay £1 and you come to work or to school in your Plimsolls, and it will raise money for them. And anybody who joins in will get free fact sheets about Samuel Plimsoll, so that they know a bit about the connection between him and the shoes.